Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to the Believe Show. We're thrilled you're here. Today's guest is Annmarie Brogan. Hello, Annmarie.
Hello, Senya.
Great to see you. I'm going to tell people a few things about you, and then we'll launch into silly questions and then the Believe, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. A few things about Annmarie. You may remember this from the last time that Annmarie was on, but she's written an incredible book. I've read it. I've used it. I wasn't sure whether I would show this, but I actually will. I used to have things behind me. Now I only have Cello, and this is in large part to Annmarie, due to Annmarie. So thank you. She's written a great book. I highly suggest you all go out and get it. Annmarie is a coach. She's a resilience coach. She's also a professional organizer. I think those kind of people are magic. They're incredible. She's the co-owner of Organize Me in New York, and she's the co-author of this great book, Beyond Tidy, Declutter Your Mind and Discover the Magic of Organized Living. Hello, Annmarie.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back on. I'm excited.
I'm thrilled to have you back on. Can you tell us just a little bit about the book before we launch into the silly questions?
Absolutely. Beyond Tidy is a fusion of our top 8 organizing principles. They're very basic, with the science of positive psychology. And it helps people understand 8 basic principles for becoming organized that they can master individually, but they could also weave them together to create really beautiful organizing systems that support their goals and the way they want to show up in the world. And we merge positive psychology in there, a lot of the science in a very easily digestible way.
Where can people get your book? Amazon, of course. That's what I showed.
Absolutely. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online. It's sold out of Target, actually, and it's sold out of Powell's, which is great. So I'm hoping that there's...
I'm such a fan when authors sell out their books. I really am. I just think that's so beautiful and so awesome. And so Target, Powell's, you're listening to us, go and get more. You have sold out. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been an amazing journey. We are really grateful.
Okay, so silly questions. Here are 3 silly questions at the beginning of the program.
Okay.
When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a ballerina, actually. However, here's the irony. I was too afraid to take dance lessons, and it used to drive my mother crazy. But I would always imagine myself as a prima ballerina.
Did you wear tutus around the house? Because a lot of kids do.
You know, I wore tights around the house a lot, and I danced around the house. So it's the silly answer, and it's a very true answer.
That's awesome. What is one of your favorite foods?
Well, now that I suffer a little bit from reflux, so I have an appreciation for a lot of different things that I should not be eating. So I love all things Mexican. I love onions and garlic and all that kind of stuff. And I love vinegar and acids, and I can't have any of it right now.
That's so sad, but so clear. Those are all delicious tastes.
They're all my favorites.
Okay, and the third of our silly questions. High school can be a challenging time. What was a good part of high school for you?
Well, I met actually some of my most treasured friends. One of them who is, like more than one, actually, like 2 or 3 of them that are still very much like my sisters. And also high school was where I discovered that I could sing. And that has been such a big part of my world. And so that was a very big time in my life.
What kind of singing do you do?
I had dreams of being on Broadway. So I studied with somebody who had actually trained me all on Broadway music. And she had done a show with Judy Garland. So every song I learned how to sing was like Judy Garland, but very much into theater, that types. But I've sung with the band also. My theater tastes are very broad.
So funny. Oh, let's launch into Believe. So with Believe, Annmarie, what is it that you believe that others in your field may not agree with you about?
So this is an offshoot, something that came up the last time we spoke. A lot of times organizers describe clutter as a series of deferred decisions, which I will say up front that Marie and I, my partner and I, fully agree with. Deferred decisions 100% will lead to clutter. There's one particular organizer who puts it really beautifully. He actually paints this beautiful picture. He said, clutter is nothing more than deferred decisions, decisions that you didn't make then that are now piled up on top of each other. And that's like a beautiful visual when you think about it, when you think of all the stuff you're looking at in front of you in a big pile of clutter and thinking of them as decisions. So we agree with that, but we do not agree with the nothing more part. That's the part of it. It's not just deferred decisions. We believe, Marie and I believe, that there is an entire category of clutter that people are very intentionally deciding to keep.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it doesn't even look messy. Sometimes it doesn't look like clutter. It looks very neat and tidy. It has a very designated place in the home, a little place of honor in their space. But we call it clutter, despite how it looks, because it takes away space from the stuff that you really do need and want.
Yeah.
And then we tell ourselves this story, oh, I don't have enough space for my things. And so the rest of the house looks really cluttered, but it's really not because of that stuff. That's the stuff you need. It just looks cluttered. The real clutter is what's nice and neat and tidy in some cases in your home.
So I can imagine my pile of magazines that I think I'm going to read. I actually, you'll be really proud. I threw them out 2 weeks ago. It was pretty big, but I can imagine that. What are other examples of what you're calling intentional clutter that we think is organized, that we think we know, but actually is not so great for us to have?
It has to do, like, this is an entire category that we kind of coined the term clutter by reason.
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember from the book, there is clutter by type, there's clutter by location. So you can have paper clutter and mental clutter and digital clutter, all of that type. But you can also have where it is. So you can have paper clutter in the kitchen. You can have toy clutter in the bedroom. But then there's this clutter by reason. And it's clutter because of the reasons why you're holding on to it. And these reasons, we take a deeper dive into that category in the book because we feel like it's very often unrecognized. People really are not recognizing that this is clutter and it's impacting the whole way they view their space and how their space is impacting them. So, you know, what you described, the magazines, we call that aspirational clutter.
I do aspire to read those. Yes.
Right. So how many people aspire to maybe take up knitting or crocheting, but instead of maybe buying a book on it or taking it out of the library, they buy 5 books and they buy 20 skeins of yarn and they buy every size needle. They're ready to dive in. And then either life gets in the way or they try it for a little bit and they go, oh, I really don't like crocheting.
Annmarie, I'm having this reaction of both, like a seesaw of guilt and motivation, because I can imagine even clutter of board games. There are board games that I wish we would play, that I think it might be fun to try, but we've tried it and we've hit dead ends. So maybe you're giving me more ideas.
Yeah, so that's aspirational clutter. The other types are, but I paid good money for it clutter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we call it. But there's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
And those two kind of work hand in hand. And these are the things that you don't use, you don't like anymore, or they don't fit. You're absolutely not using them, but you hold on to them because there's technically nothing wrong with them. And if you were to acknowledge that you needed to get rid of it, it's kind of, you know, you feel bad. It's like acknowledging a bad purchase or feeling like, you know, you invested in this, you should be using it or wearing it. So we hold on to it, and that's kind of in there. There's just in case clutter. I don't really need this, but what if I do need this?
Uh-huh.
What if the situation arises and I do need this? I'm going to keep this.
Uh-huh.
And we always say, all right, well, what if in like 3 years you need this? What would happen? You'd go out and you'd get it or you'd borrow it. So is it worth the space it's taking up now for, like, say, the next 3 years until maybe you might need it? And the chances are you probably won't. So how many of those items do we have, you know, for later clutter? Later clutter. So that we call that's an offshoot on our version of deferred decisions, which is for now clutter, where I'll just leave this here for now. That other type. This is for later. I don't really want to get rid of this. So I'm going to convince myself I can find another use for it. So I'm going to save it, but I'm going to use it for something else. And to a certain extent, that's great because we are big fans of repurposing things. So we're very big fans of that. So we don't want people to get the wrong impression. We want you to repurpose. But when you're using that as an excuse to not let go of something, and you have accumulated so much of it that it's overtaking your space,
Mhm.
that's when we'll say, okay, well, let's have a conversation and readdress some of this.
Let me tell you what some of the people who are with us today are saying. So many books that I'm going to read soon. And then Mandy is sharing in terms of this for later clutter. She's saying that's what our garage was full of until last weekend. Now she can actually park in it.
Wow. I celebrate that. That's fantastic.
Okay, okay, so we've got a bunch of different clutters. Basically, it sounds like we're making a decision in our head that we're going to do something with it, whether aspirational or paid good money or just in case or
Yes.
later. Yeah.
Yes. It's a very intentional reason. That's why we can't say it's a deferred decision, because sometimes it's a very intentional decision. And again, absolutely none of these things is clutter. If you are going to use it, if you have enough space to house it. We call it clutter when it takes away space from the more needed items and the stuff that you do want and need, and the stuff that does fit you. If all the stuff that you're wearing on a daily basis is all over your bedroom or your closet, because what's hanging is all the stuff that literally doesn't fit you anymore, or is not your taste, or for whatever reason doesn't serve you anymore. Maybe you used to work in corporate America and now you don't, but you have, 20 suits in your closet. Then it's going to be clutter. Even if they're all lined up beautifully and it looks lovely, this other clutter is building up because of that stuff.
Annmarie, the more you talk, the more I somehow feel that there's a connection between the actual clutter that you're describing, and somehow I also feel that you're describing metaphorical clutter or just other things. I don't know if this is true or not, but I just keep getting that sense from what you're talking about.
I believe it is. I mean, for some things, it is a very deep-rooted issue. Look, one of the other categories is sentimental clutter. Obviously, there's a lot of deep-rooted issues. And what happens with these types of clutter by reason is it makes the decision-making process very hard. So people often come to us, and actually, I think the last time we spoke, one of their comments and questions was, how do you handle sentimental clutter? And part of that is developing the self-awareness of what types of things you're keeping and the reasons why. So that's why it's valid and relevant to explore this in terms of moving forward on whatever your goals are.
Yeah.
And thinking about how your space and your organizational systems play into that. So with sentimental clutter, sometimes the only reason why you're keeping it is because it came from grandma. And so we're very sentimental people. Marie and I are, like, I'm a crier. So like, I'm very sentimental, I'm sappy, I'm all those things. So it's not that and I'm very emotional, and I'm filled with love for the people around me. So I understand how difficult it is to make decisions. So when it's the only reason why you're keeping it, if you absolutely hate it, if you get anxious at the thought of it, if it's shoved in like the bottom of your drawer because it's so ugly you can't possibly put it out there, but you can't let go of it because it came from grandma, how can we move through those challenges to help you still feel like you can honor your grandmother and your love for her, but still maybe part with that item or come to terms with that, rather than having your whole space be dictated by these clutter by reason categories?
Let me tell you what one of the people is speaking. I'll just read it off. What about when people live together? So this one person is saying, my wife's clutter kind of makes me angry, and invites us to go and look at his wife's closet. So in particular, this is a wife-husband situation. I can imagine a parent-child situation. What about when your clutter sensibilities are different from the people that you live with?
That is a challenging one. And that's another question we get often, and we always emphasize. I mean, we're not therapists, so we can't go into all of things, but we really do encourage. We do encourage a lot of communication. A lot of times, we kind of assume the other people in our world are mind readers, and sometimes when things are obvious to us, they may not be obvious to other people. And it's important also, as we gain self-awareness as to our own tendencies, to understand that somebody else might have a similar type of clutter for a very different reason. Like, their reason for keeping it might be different. And sometimes when we put ourselves in their position, not that it makes the clutter go away, but it makes us understand, okay, well, there's a reason for it. maybe now we can have a dialogue and talk about, well, what is our common goal? And maybe the other person doesn't understand that it's not just annoying me. It's actually causing me anxiety. Maybe we can come together. How can we come together to have some common ground?
And maybe it depends on the space too. I mean, it sounds like both people don't need to be aligned about every single space in the house.
It's true. And sometimes, like, and you mentioned parent-child, and I'll offer my own experience. I have a 20-year-old daughter, and I just recently on social media posted an Instagram reel of her room, which looks right now like it came out of a magazine. But she is actually profiled in a short piece in the book as somebody who really tested every one of the principles in the book. It used to be very difficult for me because her room looked like at times a catastrophic mess. And, right away the ego comes into play. I'm like, you are the daughter of a professional organizer. How could, but she was always organized. But, for her, like, our principle of finish the task was where she got off track. She kind of knew where things belonged, but it wasn't reflected in the way it looked. But over time, as she got older, as she got more mature, as she decided what her vision was for her space, and she became aware of how her environment impacted her, it was this turnaround, and in talking, to her and always constantly kind of reinforcing, I don't like my space to look like this. This is why my space looks like this, because I feel anxious in a cluttered environment. And over time, so it's been so beautiful to watch that evolution.
And it sounds like almost naturally.
Yes, but it took over time, but I had to endure those years.
That's a healthy example, because for you, this is something that's clearly very meaningful and you've put a lot of effort into it. And so you were earlier having this issue. So just for people to realize, it's okay. People grow and change and they get there.
Oh my goodness. Marie and I empathize on several levels with a lot of the different things we talk about. And that's why we actually pepper in a lot of personal stories, not just from our clients, but also from our own experiences. Because, we want to normalize that for people. Just because we're organizers doesn't make it easy. It just, we have more tools in our toolbox, but we still have to do the work. We still have to keep the communications high. And
Annmarie, I feel like this time has gone by so quickly. I have 3 questions for you that we usually end with. And in preparation for the first of these, I'll just summarize that we're talking about unreasonable reasons behind clutter, and that you presented this new for me belief. I've read it in your book as well, but this intentional clutter, and that we actually do cluttering by reason. You gave us a lot of examples of some of the reasons why we clutter. You talked about sentimental clutter as well, in addition to some of these that I'm putting up aspirational, just in case, paid good money for this clutter. So in conclusion, if people clutter and they don't even realize they clutter, what should they do?
I think the best thing they can do when they get to the point where they say, I can't live like this anymore, is to really, one of our principles is creating a very clear vision. Have a clear vision for your space. And I think that's a step that is often overlooked. I think it's overlooked in basic goal setting. We talk about this as the antidote to, kind of when goal setting by the middle of January, everybody's goals, which are really more resolutions, all of a sudden don't pan out. But also here, when considering your space, the clearer your vision is for your space and what you're looking to create, and again, maintaining that communication with others who may share that space and it'll impact them, the clearer you are with that, the more intentional your decision making will be. And it'll allow you to gain a little bit of self-awareness. What is in my space now? And how, the more awareness you have and the more knowledge, the clearer you will be as to what you want to grow towards. Does that make sense?
Create that vision and then start to execute, but really have that vision before you start to execute, before you change this pile or that pile.
And take the time to really explore that. Everybody jumps right into the goal setting or right into the, I need to organize this, rather than kind of taking the time to say, what is it about this space? That I want, like, or what will this give me? Like, how will it impact me when this space is organized?
Right. What do I really want my living room for? What do I really want the dining area for?
Right.
That's really helpful. I am thinking as you are saying it. I am picturing every space in my house.
I love it. And we encourage that to do a walkthrough and
Yes.
see which of the areas, are, and what part of the area. It's not just, it might not be your bedroom that's causing you the stress. It might be the papers in your bedroom. This might be a paper management issue. It may not be a bedroom space. But again, if you understand, I want to create this beautiful oasis in my bedroom. I want it to be my zen. I want it to be my my paradise and my place where I relax. That is going to impact the decisions that you make.
I just want to mention, when I read about the walkthrough in your book, I felt so fancy. I'm just going to drop your book up here again, but I felt so fancy. I felt like I was giving someone a walkthrough. What do I really want from this room? What do I want from this room? So I felt very, very cool doing that.
Marie is going to love hearing that too, because that was her. She added that to that chapter. She said, that's really helpful. I think that would be helpful. And so we added that to that chapter. So she's going to love hearing that.
Super, super fun. Last two questions for the people who are with us today, including Heather Petrozelli, just so you know. And she says,
hi,
Heather. For the people who are with us today, what is a thought that you would like to leave everyone with?
I would love to leave people with the idea that they should create a vision for their space that really supports the way they want to live. And if they take the time to look at what they are housing right now and to think about the reasons why they might be holding on to these things, that will really go a long way towards making the process of letting go into more of a reframe of, what do I get to keep and what do I get to build? Mm-hmm. Again, we always talk about, what am I building and creating? Mm-hmm. And to understand that you're worth your own effort and you're worth the vision. And taking that time to create that vision is such an important and beautiful, worthy first step in moving forward on your organizing journey.
Thank you. Thank you. And our final question, if you could snap your fingers and almost everyone were to take some action, what would you want it to be?
To take some action in general, organizing action?
Anything you want. It can be an organizing action, it can be a life action, it can be a work action, whatever you would like.
I think at this moment in time, this question is resonating with me. I would want people to pause. I would want them to pause and reflect, because we're always going. And we just plow ahead and we try to check things off our list. When I pause and reflect and just think about where I want to be and where I want to go, I think it's just so beautiful. And I think it has such value. And I want that for people. I want people to feel that they can just take a breath and be in the present moment. That's resonating a lot for me. So that's what comes up for me right now.
Annmarie, thank you so very much. It's been awesome having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me back again. I always love talking to you.
Same here. Thanks so much. Everybody, see you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.